Hey guys, I hope everyone's having a great sort of spring-y-ish weather. Today we're going to talk about how to do up a cinch. So I've got Wilson's Western saddle on here. It's got a couple shims and stuff on it as well because it doesn't quite fit him because it's a little bit too big. So you're going to have to forgive me on the terms because English saddle is obviously what I know better, but move that away. But obviously I know how to do up a cinch. I used to teach in a Western barn for a little bit too, and then I use this for trail riding. Just take one step forward. Okay. So on the other side I've got his girth hanging down, it's not twisted. His saddle is placed just behind his shoulder, not on top of his shoulder. I've got the saddle pads pulled up here at the top so that they're not pressing down on his back. So I've taken my hand and pulled them up so that they're making a bit of a roof for like a teepee there underneath there. And then I'm going to take the nylon part of the cinch and grab the girth here. I'm going to bring it through the loop of the girth and then back up through the loop on the saddle. Now with him, I typically double cinch him just to really make sure that it's not going to go anywhere. So I'm going to bring it back through the loop here at the bottom again and tighten it, and then back through the top here again for the second time. So that is double cinched. So ideally, you want to make sure you can do it with holes. So your grip doesn't slide, so I just need to tighten it up here on this side. It's set for Cleo right now. So we've got that tightened up. And now we're going to tighten it again on this side. And put it in through one of the holes so it doesn't slide. And pull it through so that it's all nice and tight. And then with this loose end, we're going to make a 4. And we're going to bring the end of the 4 up through the back part of the metal loop on the saddle. We're making a loop here. And then we're going to pull this piece down through that loop so that we have our nice knot here at the top of the cinch. As you can see, it's all nicely done up. It's behind his shoulder, not in front. Making a nice straight line. The girth isn't super far ahead or super far back behind. And then he also has a breast collar. So for that, I'm just going to come around to the other side. I'm going to grab that breast collar and bring it around to the front. And I just do it up to his girth strap as well. Normally there's like another D-ring up in this area, but this saddle is pretty basic and doesn't really have one. So I had to improvise. And to make sure that their breast collar fits properly, because we don't want it too tight or too loose, I'm going to do it up. It should be level with about their manubrium. So that's the bone on the front of their chest here. The middle part where it divides and goes underneath their legs should reach there. So that then gets done up underneath, so the loop underneath his girth. So it's not below his point of shoulder, which is right here. We don't want it to be below that. So it just sits right up here, and it stops his saddle from sliding backwards. And next, we're going to do up his bridle. So I only have an English bridle, which just involves a little bit more, few more straps than the Western bridle. So we're going to take their reins and put them over their head. We do this so that when we're removing the halter and putting the bridle on, we have some sort of control over them if they decide to go somewhere. It's not the best type of control. Usually if they decide to run, they're going to pull out of this, and then your bridle is going to get dragged with you. But this is a little bit better than having them completely loose, because you never want to have them completely free, because that can be very dangerous. So we've got this around his neck. If your horse is super, super difficult with this, I recommend doing it in a stall until they get comfortable. It's just going to take time with practicing and teaching them how to be calm during this process. So we're going to take his halter off. I'm going to make sure I'm standing right next to him, and I've got my arm closest to him tucked underneath his head so that I have control of his face as well. Again, they can still toss their head or back up and try and get out of it, but this is a little bit more secure than nothing. So then I'm going to grab the crown piece of his bridle with my hand that is around his head. And I'm going to also bring the nose band, which wouldn't be on the bridle if it was a Western bridle. And I'm going to grab it with that hand that is closest to him. And with my opposite hand, my left hand, I'm going to hold the bit in my mouth as if I'm trying to give him a treat. And then using my finger in the very corner of his mouth up here, we can see that there's no teeth right there. So that is a safe spot for us to put our finger in just the corner of their mouth to encourage them to open up to the bit. And also in the winter, I recommend that you warm your bit up. I usually put mine inside of the heating pad while I have it on their backs. So you never want to put a cold bit in their mouth because that's super uncomfortable on their skin, and you could do some frost or some freezing damage in there. So then we're going to bring the crown piece over their ears. So I'll do that again. So what I do is I push the ear furthest away from me forward. And same with the next one. So you push it forward and underneath. That way they don't get stuck and they don't get upset. You have to be very gentle with their ears because a lot of horses don't like their ears being touched. Like I've said before, these guys love it. Like they love having their ears brushed and scratched on the inside. Because I make a point to make sure I clean them out quite often, especially in the summer, because they can get quite buggy. Because they don't usually like to keep those fine masks with the ears on them. They like to pull them off because they're monkeys. So now we've got his bridle on his head. So next we're going to do up his throat latch. I kind of always do this one up first just because it's the part of the bridle that holds it on the most securely onto their head. This part is always usually found on a Western bridle as well, because it stops it from being pulled forward back over top of their head. So I'm going to do it up so that you can fit one fist in between them and the bridle strap so that we're not choking them. We don't want to be choking them like that and cutting off nerve and blood supply and their airflow. It's not good. So it's just secure enough that it's not, his bridle's not going to come off of his head. So one fist in there. Put the keepers up. Then we've got the nose band next, which again wouldn't exist on most Western bridles, but this is an English bridle. So we're going to take the nose band, we're going to put it on the inside of the bit strap on both sides. So on the inside. So for this strap, we want to make sure that it's 1 finger length, 1 finger width below the crest of their facial crest. So that's this bone here that sticks out here. It's kind of like their cheekbone. So it's right here. So the bridle should sit, or the nose band should sit 1 finger width underneath that. If it's too low, it can compress down on the nasal bones, and there it becomes a more delicate area as we move further down the bone, which can become broken, which I've mentioned in previous videos. So now we're going to do up the chin strap next, the nose band. So this, I don't like to do up too tightly. You need to make sure you can fit about 2 fingers underneath because they've got nerves that run down through here. And if we do it up too tightly, we're going to compress those nerves and we can possibly cause nerve damage. And it's also just not comfortable and not kind. And they also have a flash. I could probably honestly take this off, both of them. But I've kind of just kept it on them because occasionally when they decide to be butt heads, they like to open their mouth and ignore what I'm telling them to do. So the flash is again another strap that I've mentioned before that we have to be very careful that we don't do up too tightly because we can fracture their nasal bone. So this one again, just snugly Be able to fit 2 fingers in between there and him. All the way around. But also we don't want it so loose that it's going to slip off their nose. You do have the keepers on that. And there you go. So for him, I have a French link loose ring snaffle. And his mouth I ride clear in the same thing. I use this bit because it is the softest one that I have been able to find. The French link, instead of making a bridge like this in their mouth when you go to pull on the reins, it lays flat over their tongue because the normal snaffle bit will bridge and then hit the top of their mouth, which used to cause Cleo to throw her head up anytime I put pressure on the reins. So with this one, it's just a little bit softer bit that conforms more to the shape of their mouth. The loose ring kind of gives it a little bit more mobility and relax and softness as well because it can move a bit more. For fitting the bits, we want to make sure that it sits just nicely outside the edge of his mouth. It's not hanging out too much so that we can't pull the bit through either side of his mouth because the rings on either side are keeping it securely, and it's also not pinching his mouth either. And then when you go to look at the side, he would keep his head up, you just see one little wrinkle, and that's all you want to see. You don't want to see that many wrinkles because then it's too tight. So just one little one. That's how loose the side piece is. So it's not pulling on him, it's just snugly there, ready to go to be used as our steering wheel. So that is his bridle. Fit nicely to him. All tacked up and ready to go.